and welcome to a new episode of PR360. And I'm your host, Brett Deister. And this week on PR360, we're going to be talking about social media, the topic that everybody loves to hate and still is on it because it's a part of life. It's a part of the public square. People need to be on this type of a thing. But with me, I have Jon-Stephen Stansel with me, and he's a social media professional with almost a decade of experience managing, building, and creating content for brand social media accounts, including RPG, Better Place Forest, also Amazon Prime's Invisible animated series, and so much more. He also is a fellow podcaster as well through the Thought Feeder podcast, which you guys should check out as well. But welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and the first question I ask all my guests is, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Definitely coffee in the morning, and then as we seg into the afternoon, I switch into like a iced, unsweet green tea. So a little bit of both.
Any like specific green teas?
I picked up the I used to live in Japan, and you could just get it out of the vending machine and unflavored, unsweetened, just no frills, nothing. So I'll get some that if I'm in the mood, I'll get it. Some Japanese brands imported. If not, just whatever I can find that's American that isn't like super, super sweet or flavored, which is hard to find sometimes.
That's true. There are a few, but you really have to like find the specific companies that just do tea, it seems like. And I gave a brief explanation or summarization of your expertise. Can you give our audience a little bit more about what you do?
I've been doing social media for just over 10 years now, since you could do social media, and started in higher ed, doing social media for universities, did some in government for the Texas Department of Transportation. There's nothing you can say to me on social that hurts my feelings after doing that. And recently, in the past couple of years, we've been working in the entertainment industry. I was freelancing, doing work for various television series, and now work for a company called Chaotic Good Studios that does franchise management in the entertainment industry. So mainly focusing on sci-fi and fantasy franchises. But now I get to kind of like zoom out and do a little bit more strategy, as opposed to just building content and doing sort of the day-to-day putting out fires of being a social media manager. So it's nice to kind of step back and like look at bigger picture, long-term strategy a little bit more.
Got you. And then getting right into it about creating content. Everybody knows that we need to create content for social media, but it seems to be, at least from I think more perception type, that it seems to be harder to create content than it was like 10 years ago, where it was just like you could just write a sentence or you could write a paragraph or take a picture and people would like it. So how can PR pros create that compelling content without making it too overly complicated for themselves?
I think that's definitely the case, where it was, even just a few years ago, or, there was still some novelty to brands being on social media and brands applying or saying something clever, kind of out of character a little bit. And now I think audiences have become a little bit more accustomed to it. So just putting stuff out there is not working. You've really got to take the time and make content that is going to resonate with people, that has a certain level of quality, but also retains authenticity, which is kind of difficult middle ground to find. But for me, I think is guiding yourself by the North Star of the fact people don't share your content to tell other people about your brand. That's not what they do. They share content to help tell their own story, to say something about themselves. They're saying, I'm sharing this because this is an issue I care about, or I'm the type of person that has this sort of sense of humor, or I connect with this in some sort of way. So if you can give your audience tools to like help tell their own story, they'll help you tell yours. So look for those opportunities. And I think that's kind of make that your guiding principle and let everything else follow from there.
And then, I mean, on the video issue, should they start to split between long form and short form? Because it seems like even YouTube's like, well, you got to create those shorts. Like, it's fine you're creating the long form content, but we want to see those shorts.
Yeah, you've got to have a good blend of everything, and you can't put your eggs all in one basket. We talked about and we've seen a lot with Instagram kind of changing and shifting towards reels and putting more emphasis on video. But for me, who's been doing social for so long, I remember when Facebook was like, we're pivoting to video. Everything has to be video. And then they pulled back from that. And all these people that spent maybe they let photographers go in lieu of videographers, and, let's put all their money into video. And then it changed all on a dime all of a sudden. So I think one of the things, brands need to remember is we need to remain agile. Yes, video is, what everybody's wanting to do right now and what's really important, short or long form, but that might change tomorrow. So I think it's important for brands to diversify. Think about, okay, what are we need to do some short form, we need to do some long form, but we also need to be ready to pivot if that changes again. So more than anything, I think brands really need to understand, like, you have to be very agile with your social content.
Yeah, and then speaking of Meta, they announced recently the feed changes, which basically they were like, "Hey, we're just going to show things that, or people or brands that you don't follow, but we're just going to inject them more into it." So, are we seeing Meta chasing trends now than actually being the trendsetter? Because for a while they were the trendsetter. They were the ones that were doing these new and innovative things, and now it seems like they're just following the next trend, like you said, with video. Everything's video. Okay, not really.
Yeah, I'm not in those meetings with Meta, and I'd be curious to be in some, but I think they see the success of TikTok and they're a little scared. And in the past, we've seen, like, before it was Meta, when it was still just Facebook was the name of the company, they would, they offered to buy Snapchat, and then when Snapchat said no, they just stole half of their the features. And with TikTok, I don't even think they're trying to buy it. We're just going to copy you as much as we can, because they see the success and they're scared by it. They want to stay relevant. They want to be long term. And yeah, frankly, they're trying to innovate in some ways, but either they're too far out with some of, like, the metaverse and VR and AR, which I think eventually will be very important, but right now it's just not there yet. So yeah, they're kind of chasing after, and threatened a little bit by TikTok, but also to your point about not seeing people you're following in the feed and it feeding you other things. Like, they know, like, TikTok is great at that. And I think they're also aware that, with Facebook and Instagram to some degree, like, people are not engaging with their, Aunt Sally who's posting, and Uncle Lou who's posting, wild conspiracy theories on Facebook. And that's just not resonating. People aren't finding it to be an enjoyable place to be anymore. So they're saying, okay, well, we've got all this information on you. We understand what you respond to via algorithms. So we're just going to start serving you stuff up that we think you're going to be interested in. We're pretty darn sure you are going to be, because the algorithms are really good. And sometimes people really like it. And then other times it's like, man, I just want to see pretty pictures on my Instagram of my friends, So I don't think Facebook knows, at least they're definitely using data to make these decisions. Like, if they didn't think it was going to be profitable and keep people on the platform longer, they wouldn't be doing it. But also, people, users are saying, like, no, I want my old thing back. So it's a tricky balance, I think, between what people say they want and what their behaviors actually show they want.
Gotcha. And how do you think it'll impact their business, but also brands? Because it seems like them going, "Oh, we're going to pump more things that people may not follow," seems like an opportunity for brands, but also could backfire on brands at the same time. Because, I mean, it's like people are like, "I don't follow you. Why am I
I
saying
also
this?"
think, a lot of social media managers are worried about it. And they're like, well, our followers aren't seeing our content anymore, or, where the algorithm is hurting us to an extent. And sometimes I think it's not the algorithm that's hurting you, it's your content. Like, if your content was good enough, the algorithm would pick up on it and share it with more people. But there's also, algorithm chasers who, use every single algorithm trick in the book to get content out there that's still, like, it feels clickbaity, right? You can tell when somebody is just really trying to game the algorithm with their copy and everything. So I think it's a delicate balance of understanding that if I'm continue to stay the course and have a strong strategy, the algorithm is going to help me and not hurt me. Um, and looking at my data and going, okay, well, what I'm doing is not working. How do we change that? Um, so I'm not totally scared of algorithms. Sometimes I think they help more than they harm.
Gotcha. And I mean, since we're still talking about it, is it good or bad that they're still chasing after TikTok, or should they be trying to innovate within their own? Because I feel like every of the older ones do have a sort of like brand feeling to a lot of people. Like I think like Kim Kardashian, all of them were like keep Instagram. I don't want to see TikTok and something like that. So is it a good thing or a bad thing that they're trying to chase after
You
a
know,
pot of gold at the end of the rainbow?
again, not being there, I'm just kind of conjecture. I wonder if some of it is just like, hey, we have to keep showing stakeholders that we're staying competitive, even though we know this is not probably the best thing. Or they're looking at, I think a lot about the rise of like super apps within Chinese social media, right? You have WeChat that just has everything in it. Like you can go to a convenience store and use your WeChat to pay. And I think Meta may be looking at some of those and going, okay, well, that's going to happen here. So we need to be the company that does that. Culturally, I don't know if it's going to work here as well. Because like you said, I think a lot of people audiences are like, well, I have my Instagram for photos, I have Facebook for family stuff, I have TikTok for fun and videos, and it's very distinct what I use each network for, rather than just like one massive network. But I can see that that's Facebook's ultimate goal. They want to be the internet for you. They don't want you ever to need to leave the app. You can do your shopping, you can do your video stuff, you can do, find how-to information as more people are using TikTok to kind of replace YouTube as like, how do I, step by step do X, Y, and Z. So Facebook may be going for that. I keep going back and forth calling it Facebook versus Meta. It's hard to change, right? Change is hard, but yeah, I think that might be one thing they're doing, and we'll see where that goes and where that plays out. I don't think they're making giant business decisions just on a whim for sure. They've definitely got data and evidence to back it up. So we'll see.
Gotcha. I mean, even talk about the content. So, how should maybe a brand is more of a software company? Let's just say that. How should they go about doing the tutorials? Should they do little tidbit tutorials for maybe the easy things, and then do more long form tutorials for like the harder things to do within their program? Like for example, I use DaVinci Resolve, and there's some things you cannot teach in DaVinci Resolve in a really short format. It has to be longer because you have to figure out how to do. Sometimes Fusion takes a long time
Exactly.
to
And
actually
I
figure
think
out.
it kind of comes with the, depending on what the need is. There are like quick bites where I can give you like a quick tip in a 1 minute video, and those are really useful. But like you said, there are some things that's like you can't explain all the ins and outs in a single video. You might see more like a video series. TikTok is sort of expanding into slightly longer form. You got 10 minutes, which in TikTok time is like an eternity. I'm kind of curious to see how the plays on those sort of videos work out. And then also just understanding your audience's needs, like looking at your video data and seeing where people drop off and where people, are finding the most value. Like how many times have you like looked up a how-to video and had to like scan, quickly scan through the video of like, okay, all right, I get all this. I need this one specific thing. So kind of looking at some of that data and building videos around that, I think works really well too.
And so maybe for small businesses, because a lot of times they do struggle a little bit with the creating content, how can they effectively do social media strategies or make their social media more or better so the algorithm does pick them up and so they get
I think
more
it starts with
followings in
goals
that
before
way?
anything else. Like I think so many small businesses, especially, they can't afford to hire a full-time social media manager, maybe not even a part-time social media. You have like the actual business owner running the Facebook page. And they try to make it as useful, as Facebook tries to make it as user friendly as possible. But marketing is marketing, right? You can go to school and get a degree in that, and most small business owners don't have that experience. So understanding your goals, what are you wanting to be out of social media, rather than like, as so many small businesses go like, oh well, I've got to be on TikTok because I saw somebody on TikTok say that all small business owners need to have TikTok, or my nephew said Instagram is where to be. um, why are you there? What is your goal for it? And then focusing in on that, and does this content get me to that goal, or am I just putting content for the sake of content? Like, how much time am I spending on it? Like, every single thing needs to go towards a goal, and I think that'll streamline your social presence a lot. That might be what says, okay, our goal is X. TikTok does not help us meet that. Therefore, we do not need to spend time there. Not every brand needs to be on, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of it. Like, based upon what your goals are, choose where you need to be and where your time needs to be spent. Because it takes a long time to make good content.
I mean, that even goes to content because some industries, like let's say social audio, it was the big thing in COVID, and then it kind of been like no one really wants to use it as much anymore. But there are some industries that it works well with. I think like the crypto industry does really well with the social audio aspect of it because a bunch of people want to know about cryptocurrency. But I mean, a lot of other avenues or industries, it doesn't really work. So is it more picking and choosing the content just as much as the network
Oh, for
you
sure.
choose
And
to be on
sometimes
as
like the
well?
network's going to dictate what kind of content you're putting out there. Like, if you're going to be on TikTok, it better be making good videos, right? And with Instagram, it used to be pictures, now like a little bit more video. Where is my audience? Like, if I am a software company that, let's say sells software for accountants. Well, accountants on TikTok are a whole other thing, but like, what, is my audience there? So that's a big consideration. So I think so many small businesses kind of go for whatever's trendy right now, and as opposed to what might be best for their business. Like, not all social media has to be sexy, right? Sometimes just a really useful Facebook page that services your audience. I being in higher ed, people would constantly say like, "Oh, the kids aren't on Facebook anymore. They're not on Facebook anymore." That's not exactly true. They're there. They're just not as active as they are, and their parents are there. So putting timely information that our audience wants and needs where they are, um, is just paramount. You've got to be able to do that and recognize that, rather than just chasing after. Do college students really want their university on TikTok? I'm not really sure I'm sold on that idea.
Yeah, it's almost like picking and choosing the trends, but not
Exactly.
chasing
And
every
and
trend.
part of it is like, social media managers over the course of time. Like, when I first started working in social media, I wanted like, okay, there's a new feature on Instagram. Let's figure out how we can use that. Oh, here's a trending meme. Let's see how we can use that for our brand. And the longer I am in social media, the more restraint I have, where I go, wait, let's wait and see how this plays out a little bit before we jump into it. I like to say, don't rush to be the first brand to do something on social media. Rush to be the first brand to do it well.
That's good. And then can you share 3 important tips for social media management? Could it be like using buffer, or what is your top three for that?
First, take care of your mental health. Social media a constant thing and can get overwhelming really quickly. So be sure that you're planning out your breaks. If you know, NPR doing crisis calm, be sure that you have, you know, you're distancing yourself from it, and have support of your boss to kind of protect that mental health, because it can get really draining really quickly. Burnout is a real thing for social media managers that happens pretty often. Um, After that, I would say, um, there, where to even begin? There's so many little things. Um, Social listening and following your competitors, but it's a double-edged sword there. Like, be aware of what your competitors are doing, but don't chase after and always be imitating what they do. Remember that just because your competitor is doing it doesn't mean it's working for them. And we see this all the time in higher ed, where it's like, okay, so the school down the street is doing this on social media, we need to be doing it too. Like, well, we can look and see their engagement rate right there. It's not very good. So maybe we don't need to be doing that. A great tool for that is the Facebook ad library. I don't think enough people use that, where you can just type in the name of any brand and see all the paid ads they're running. That's incredibly useful. And then third, I would say, more than one of the most important things a social media manager can do is develop a network of other social media managers to reach out to and talk to, compare notes with. So often social media managers are the only social media person in their organization. So it can be very difficult to brainstorm ideas and to see what the trends are, because you don't have anybody else to kind of bounce ideas off of. So it's really helpful to get online and meet some other social media managers, go have lunch with them, go just have a Zoom chat with a social media manager in another industry, and talk about it. Because one, and again, that goes back to like helping your mental health and knowing like the struggles, like, okay, I'm not the only one who struggles with this, but also it helps, you know, sharing ideas and kind of collaborating a little bit in some ways that you would not really expect.
So it's almost like take breaks, don't silo yourself, and you're only human.
Exactly,
So do
yeah.
the best you can.
There's a lot, you know, being a social media manager, it's one of the few jobs where everyone from like the intern in the mailroom to the CEO see the product of your work and have a very strong opinion of it. So yeah, it's really important to understand, like, okay, it's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay if, you know, not every post needs to go viral, right? Sometimes people complain very loudly on social, and it's tough. So yeah, it's it's taking some time to step back and get away from it, I think, is really important too.
Gotcha. And then what do you think is going to shape the future of social media?
I'm very curious what Gen Z is doing, and the way they're interacting with social media and using it. We're seeing a lot more of what we kind of call dark social, where I think a lot of Gen Z has had this message drilled into them that you need to be careful what you post. Boomers talking to Gen Z, right? Don't post anything to social because it'll keep you from getting into college. It'll keep you from getting a job. You never know who's looking. And so we see more things like peer-to-peer social with like things like Discord and other kind of Be Real, things like that are a little bit smaller networks, because they're not posting as publicly and openly as other generations or other people have done in the past. So that's going to really change how brands interact. If, okay, we're not getting any public social listening data, people are not interacting with us as much publicly as they used to. So what do we do? How do we use some of these, you know, other networks like Discord to find ways to reach our audience and to help and to you know, answer their questions? That's going to be really interesting to watch. I think I'm not sure if that's going to be the next trend, but I definitely think that dark social is here to stay, and we need to be aware of how those work and the changing habits of Gen Z on social.
Gotcha. So almost like, look, the future will be shaped by the future generations, which makes sense because the millennials basically shaped what social media is today through getting on Facebook, Twitter, and all the
Exactly.
and YouTube
Exactly.
as
And
well.
every generation's a little bit different and reacts differently. And again, you may see kind of like the breakdown of generations. Like you've got older folks on Facebook, and then the younger folks are on some of these little, more peer-to-peer networks, and everywhere in between. So again, like knowing where your audience is and how to best reach them is just going to be extra important going into the future, and understanding that you can't have one message that fits all of them.
Mm-hmm. And then fun question for you. If you could create a new social media persona,
It's funny because I do this all the time, both in creating new accounts and just sometimes creating new ones for myself. Some of the things I love to create tone and voice documents, which is such a nerdy thing, but like, okay, what does this account sound like? What sort of things does this account post? What does it not post? One thing I find really helpful in creating a new account is creating a celebrity voice that just kind of helps me in my head, right? So like when I was at the Department of Transportation in Texas, we used the Sam Elliott character from The Big Lebowski, the stranger, kind of cowboy, figure. And then at the University of Central Arkansas, we use the Mythbusters build team. Like this is, we talk like they do. It's fun. It's kind of authoritative. It's a little nerdy, but still pretty cool. And that was helpful to me when writing copy, because I could say, all right, I know how I write. How does this voice write? And it's a good shorthand. And if I took a vacation and somebody else needed to write it, rather than hand them this giant tone and voice document that I created for it, I can just hand them a picture and say, write like this. And it's a quick shorthand and easy way to build a voice. So that's one thing I would definitely do. I'd start building those. I'm a total nerd and like play Dungeons and Dragons. So like, create a character sheet for your account. Like what, who is this? What is its voice? What is its backstory? All of those things, and really get deep into it. It's extremely nerdy fun that I enjoy doing.
So what characters do you usually create in Dungeons and Dragons? You usually create, let's say, like a mage, a warrior, a bard, or you chaotic good, neutral. Like what is it that you usually create?
Well, I work for Chaotic Good Studio, so always chaotic good, right? But I personally, I always play either like a rogue or a thief sort of character. I like being stealthy, and with lots of charisma, where I can talk my way out of a problem rather than, knock a door down. I think that says a little bit more of just who I am personally, rather than how I run social accounts. Maybe it's a little bit how I run social accounts as well. But yeah, I always enjoy being able to stealthily avoid the danger rather than confront it head on.
That's fair. And then where can people find you online?
At JS Stansel on all platforms. So I'm really active on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there on TikTok as well. You can listen to my podcast. I co-host with Joel Goodman. It's called Thought Feeder Pod. We do that about once every 2 weeks. We started kind of recording again a lot more actively. So find that anywhere you download your podcast.
All right. Any final thoughts for listeners?
Just keep at it. Like I said, if you're doing social media, stick with goals and protect your mental health, because it can be a rough place out there sometimes, but still a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you, Jon-Stephen, for joining PR 360 and sharing your knowledge on social media.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to PR360. As always, please subscribe to PR360 on all your favorite podcasting apps. Leave a 5-star review if you like this podcast. If not, let us know how we can do better for you. And join us next week as we talk to another great thought leader in the PR industry. All right, guys, stay safe. Get to understanding and taking breaks and doing all the stuff that you need to do for social media, but understand that you are human as well. And see you next week. Later.